Rhie has developed and led trainings on the impact of trauma on youth experiencing homelessness, presented nationally on creating equity in the homeless response system by opening pathways to collaboration with young people experiencing homelessness, and has worked with the Dell Medical School at the University of Texas here in Austin to create an educational tool, Voices from the Street, a digital tool to bring homeless healthcare into classrooms for their Understanding Homelessness course. Rhie recently collaborated with the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness as a reviewer and reviser of All In, the federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. And she is just a wonderful speaker, inspiring person, and you're going to be uplifted by what she has to say. So let's bring Rhie up to the stage.
All I want to do is write the words that birth a collective breath, a belly-deep moment, an instant in which we shift our understanding to one of our collective roles and contracts we never signed and power upheld in earnest, and we exhale the fear that holds us frozen in facilitated parts. Words that open hearts to the agony of the dialect and the through line of hope that shrouds our choices. I can't find the words to illuminate why the golden rule simply means seeing the wholeness in the human being in front of you. To express that we're each experiencing ourselves and everyone around us, and so the number of people existing in each room is exponential in every moment. I want you to see in one breath the young woman standing before the trash can on 4th in Colorado, so hungry and desperate for food that her actual choice that steamy night was the closed white styrofoam of someone else's dinner, or nothing at all for the third night in a row. I want you to hold the truth of what that decision must have been. And in the next breath, I want you to see the woman before you now who trains boardrooms on how to shape systems, and I don't know how to tell you that they are one and the same. And I worry about your judgment from the moment I cross the threshold, how I'm gonna prove myself to this room, and I don't know how to tell you that we are products of systems that we sign off on every day, and that we ourselves are the very systems that we deride. I wanna find the words to express how much I know that makes you afraid, how much I know that feels as though it's stealing your power, your freedom, your choice. But there's a truth that your freedom is both an illusion and the only choice that you have. That's the agony of the dialect, the tension that breeds this discomfort and fear. And I want you to know how I know this. I want you to be moved by my scars, impassioned by my wounds, because these aren't only wounds I carry, instead the weight we all bear. And I can't find the words to explain what this means. And all I want to do is write the words that birth a collective breath.
Yep.
Here we go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
How about that introduction, though? I bet you weren't expecting that person to be this person. Well, maybe some of you, but I think that's kind of the point. As I've been outside today, smoking, tattooed, flamboyant, and loud, I've been the best version of myself because it's honest. And coupled with these clothes,
Ow!
and this hair,
Yes.
these attitudes, and this body is me.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who contributed to the Biden administration's federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. someone who helped plan and execute this year's Capitol Hill Day event for the National Alliance to End Homelessness, bringing together over 400 people in over 200 meetings with legislators to advocate for more funding for services, for shelter, and for staff in all of our organizations. Someone who worked with the Dell Medical School to create a learning tool for med students and did so the entire time under a criminal trespass charge at the University of Texas in Austin for the crime of having fallen ill in the University Union. Someone who has had their very humanity stripped from their identity through camping bans through systematic dehumanization, through camping bans and denied access to toilets and water. Someone who wears a photograph of the alley of 23rd and Guadalupe painted on their skin as a badge of remembrance. All of these truths are packaged not so neatly in this person in front of you today, invited here to be the keynote speaker in the city where I was last without a home, in front of some folks who knew me then, and some who've seen me grow. And I promise you, there are a percentage of people in this room who walked past me today, barely casting a glance my way. Maybe some who recognized in me the lived experience label before I ever opened my mouth and already decided they were gonna tolerate my presence because this new world is requiring us to have these people at the table, but we know what that really means, so let's just take a deep breath, let them talk, and we'll get down to the real business once this box is checked.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I see you see me, and I know. And there are some folks in this room today who would never imagine that the person out front smoking a square this morning was going to be the person invited to this banquet hall, tasked with something. So I promise I practice. No. The person invited to this banquet hall, tasked with inspiring you to do better, to build community, to root your work in relationships and see that we need each other if we're gonna navigate this work ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
And you know something? That's okay. I didn't expect you to. Because this is not about shame, but a call to reflection. What are we missing when we decide who somebody is before we've given them a chance to know us and be known? Most Lived X folk don't come with such a stellar introduction from the president and CEO of the statewide organization hosting us here today. And they and we bring just as much value and expertise to these tables as he does because we have been what props these table legs up.
Yes, ma'am.
So why me? Right?
You're rad.
I mean, I'm cool, you're right. Why me? Why here? What is it that has earned me this pretty prestigious honor of opening plenary keynote for the Texas Statewide Conference on Homelessness? Clearly, between Eric's introduction and the various someones that I've just introduced you to, I've done some pretty cool things, it's true. So y'all, I started flirting with homelessness as a late teen. Shy smile here, little wink there. Dallas Deep Ellum Nights and the Good Latimer Bridge introduced me to a pretty seductive dude. And you know the freedom, escape, whatever you want to call it. And y'all know the what that led me down that path, it's mine. And it's not something that I'm willing to sell to you just to get you to see more of my humanity. And so, all y'all need to know is that I landed in Austin in my 20th year, and here, in one of my darkest moments, I was introduced to the Phage Drop-In Center on the drag. I met a girl named Rose one day while I was unsuccessfully trying to hide the wrenching sobs of like, I don't know what to do now, and I don't know where I'm gonna go next, and I was sitting at the top of the square, the artist marketplace that used to be Renaissance Square on the drag. And Rose, she took me to the basement, where I got my phase number, 71186, some canned goods, and a place that would become my home base for the next little while. Phase was a project run by LifeWorks here in Austin, and over the course of the next 3 years, they would offer me air conditioning, washer and dryer use, sometimes when it worked. Y'all know. Food, canned goods, and for me, eventually, some counseling, a spot in a transitional living shelter, and a placement in the job program with Ben & Jerry's. So clearly, I was immediately successful, right? Permanent housing, stability, a job. Okay, all right. But so, after I exited out of LifeWorks programs, because I aged out a little too soon, I was still on the street for a while. So I shambled along on Dillos and long days at the Springs. I played the role of Mama Rhie on the drag at 22 and 23 years old, emulating and embodying the care that Rose gave me that day when I was so lost. So there's like a whole story of how I did eventually get housed up, but if I'm real with y'all, I didn't do a time check in writing my first draft to see where we are. So what we're gonna do is fast forward to 2017.
Yeah.
All right, okay. I'll throw you a bone about my housing story. I got housed up in 2007 and it basically took that time. And so now we're in 2017, I'm married, I'm working in the call center at Austin's Pizza. Some of y'all who have come to visit here over the years at this conference might actually know my voice. I was the whole voice for Austin's Pizza for like 2012 to 2018. Like, thank you for calling Austin's Pizza. All of our representatives are currently taking orders. You get it. So it's 2017. I've been stably housed for about 7 years at this point, and I'm a shift lead in this call center. When I get a call and on my caller ID, it says Susan McDowell. So some of y'all likely know that Susan McDowell is the executive director of LifeWorks here in Austin. I certainly did know that at the time because she had been since my tenure as a street kid there. So I go through my whole spiel and I'm like asking for her number and I go, hey, are you Susan McDowell, like the executive director of LifeWorks? Susan McDowell. And y'all, you could totally hear the shift in her voice from like, I was just trying to order pizza for my kids on a Friday night to like, now I've been spotted. Low-key, I kind of felt that for her. So I told her that I was a former client and I asked her if she remembered me and she did. Did I lose? Okay, we're good. I asked her if she remembered me and she did. And like, honestly, that was kind of shocking to me. Like, I was like, how do you remember me? But I've been told that I can leave a bit of an impression. I start telling her about my life. I tell her that I'm married, but I'm in school, going back to school, and that one day I was gonna come for LifeWorks, that I was gonna come work there one day. And that's what happened. That same year in 2017, a position opened for the coordinator of the Austin Youth Collective, and I was hired. And it was wild, y'all. I was so nervous, I was so excited. Like, this position opened and this job description was so perfectly me and my skill set that it was like fated. Except here's the deal, I never finished college, right? I still haven't finished college, just in case y'all didn't know that. And I was like, going, how? How could I possibly get to go back and work at LifeWorks? After everything that they had done for me, everything that I owed them, and like the opportunity to walk alongside youth and young adults who were experiencing the things that I had experienced in the place that I had been, it was a lot. The most amazing part of this story to me, and that y'all director hiring people need to hear, is that the people who hired me into that role were the youth and young adults of the Austin Youth Collective. The decision was theirs, and it is something that I am like humbled and honored by, literally in this moment. Stop it. So here's the thing, another amazing part of this story, there are a couple of folks in this room today who were a part of the very group of youth and young adults that hired me. And I have been given the privilege of walking alongside them and seeing them continue to grow and flourish in their advocacy, activism, art, and passion.
Oh!
Yes. That deserves an applause. In truth, I grew alongside the collective in those 3 years. I came into this work with a solid anti-racist background and framework and analysis. And it was definitely something that got me in trouble a time or two in some places that weren't quite ready for it yet. But it was the foundation of my work with the Austin Youth Collective. And y'all, did I screw that up a time or two? I found myself in reflection after stepping away from the collective that I so desperately wanted to protect them from this world that I fell into that trap of paternalism. And in my need to protect them, I stifled their voices from time to time, and I didn't even know that I had done it, right? And I think we can all relate to that feeling. Like, I really do, you know? You want to help people, and then you decide you know what's best for them, right? And it's a thing we gotta work against in our work every day, in ourselves every day. The thing about this work is that none of us is perfect. And most of us fear accountability to some degree, and that can often lead to defensiveness and missed opportunities. We come into this work, and everywhere we turn, we are meant to be engaging from a place of authenticity. Authenticity, authentic engagement, authentic collaboration, authenticity. I gotta tell y'all something. I'm really struggling with that word these days. I hate how it has become a buzzword in a time when what it means to be whole together truly matters. The thing I've learned, oh right, I know this. The thing I've learned the thing that I've learned these last few years, decades maybe, is that to be whole is to be accountable. Our culture treats accountability as though it were a dirty word. It is almost instantly associated with punishment. So I'm here to tell you today that all accountability is owning when we make mistakes and doing something differently next time. That's it. That's it. That's it. It is trying again because that last thing, it didn't work. I once said to a colleague that I'm all for iteration, but iteration without accountability, it doesn't mean anything.
Speak.
You know?
Speak.
And that's something I learned in my work here in Texas, that we can iterate, that when we iterate and we reiterate and we reiterate and we iterate again, but we aren't accountable to the harm that we are causing, that harm snowballs.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just spent a couple of days earlier this month at the Point Source Youth Southern Conference in Atlanta, and damn, y'all, I spent 2 days listening and learning from youth and young adults who live and breathe this work because it is their lives. And they called us out as a system for exploiting their passions with no accountability to them. And they aren't wrong. Our system needs young folks, queer folks, Black and brown folks at the forefront of this work, because we simply do not have the right to walk into communities not just representing but embodying the very systems that have caused these oppressions and disparities, and then say, we have the solutions. Right? How dare we? Because if we had the solutions, this conference would look real different. Right? So the lifetimes packed into my years of life works, they require more emotional capacity and labor, frankly, than I am willing to share. But I will tell you that it led to my engagement as the co-chair of the Austin-Travis County COC Racial Equity Task Force.
Woo!
Committee. Listen, I'm not quite sure we ever solidified a name while I was there, which is something you can all relate to. What I am sure is that it was a time of radical change that crawled along in increments. We worked in that space to build community, and it is in that space that our team engaged in an activity adapted from the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond's Undoing Racism training. An activity where I first learned what power could be, how power could be, and what we could be doing with it. Let me tell you about it, but I gotta flip my page. So, Austin got selected, right, to be a part of this HUD initiative. At the time, it was called the Racial Equity Demonstration Project, but then it became to be known the Coordinated Entry Racial Equity Initiative. Again, we're all familiar with these name changes. And it was where we streamlined and honed the Austin Prioritization Index, which I want to side note is now referred to and called the Austin Prioritization Assessment Test. However, when I speak about it, I will be calling it the API because that's what it was when I was working on it. So, In this project, right, we streamlined and honed the API, and it was where we were introduced to this activity about interrogating the power of our roles, And one of my dearest colleagues offered up, I set the agenda for meetings. And my whole entire world was blown open. See, I understood intimately what power was when under its control, but power that I wielded, that I could wield, something as simple as setting an agenda or facilitating a meeting, it was a deepening of my understanding and what it could look like to be liberated in my actions and in my role. It was learning that I had power, but not quite accepting it yet. Y'all, we are all so often so deeply tied into this work that we do that it becomes our identity, or an identity that we carry. And so much so that we begin to lose sight of how we are the systems that we are fighting and working so desperately to change. That every time we say, well, that's just how it is, there's nothing that we can do about it, we are shrugging off our role and our responsibility to that role. And we are missing an opportunity to try and do something better, different. I learned a lot in that time from all kinds of people. And I think a lot about, like, especially this week since I've been back in town, like, where would my life be today if Susan hadn't been in my queue for that pizza order that night? Like, that one thing. And really, because it's through this timeline that I was invited to work alongside our national coaches on the Racial Equity Demonstration Project. And it is also when I was exposed to transparent and accountability in a way that I had never seen before. So, our coaches came in to work with us for this Racial Equity Demonstration Project, right? And for a few months prior to that, our Racial Equity Task Force group, work group, well, I don't know what they're called anymore, but that team had been working on redesigning and redoing our prioritization tool, right? We'd already been working on this. Everybody knows the VI Spadat is racist, everybody. Studies have come out. Y'all, I literally met the guy that developed VI Spadat at the National Alliance Conference this year, and even he is like, please, I don't want to be known for that anymore. And so we're moving, we're changing, we're growing, and we're working, and we're trying to identify a new tool and a new assessment for our community. And our coaches come in, and they tell us about this landscape assessment, and this landscape assessment is the metric that they're going to use to track our outcomes for HUD. And my very first question was, who designed this landscape assessment? Like, who decided what questions we needed to ask? And our coaches were super cool. They were like, Rhie, we don't know the answer to that, but we're gonna find it out and we'll let you know. And so this was on a Monday. That same week, on a Friday, we're on our community cohort call, and we are with all 8 communities, all 7 of the other 8 communities selected to be a part of this project. And on this call, our coaches had a course correction slide. And if I'm honest with y'all, and I'm gonna be a little honest with y'all, I may not have been totally paying attention to what was going on at that 3 p.m. Friday afternoon Zoom call, but I was logged in. I had a cute little profile picture up. I was kind of listening. We can all relate. And so they're going down this list of course corrections, and they get to their last bullet point, and on their last bullet they say, someone asked us this week who designed our landscape assessment, and we realized that it was a group of 3 white folks with no lived experience of homelessness. And we feel like maybe that's not the best way to go about doing this project. And so they scrapped the landscape assessment. They built out their data team, and by the time I joined the coaching team, that data team was, there was a group of folks with lived experience who were Black, brown, people of the global majority, and absolutely brilliant minds in research and analytics. And they joined that team, and they redesigned that landscape assessment. Can we just pause for a second on what that example of transparent accountability looks like? Seriously. Like, they were like, oh, this is not the right thing to do. We didn't do this correctly. Here's what we're gonna do to try to correct it. And then they took action, right? And they did this publicly.
Yes.
They did this publicly.
Yes.
Thank you. I implore you in this room to let go of shame and fear around missteps. This is how we build relationship with one another. We have to be able to show up. We are not going to see an end to homelessness if we can't create community. I'm just for real, I'm for real. It wasn't service providers that got me off the streets. I owe a lot to these programs, to be sure, but it was my community that helped me get off the street. And the thing is, y'all, look around you. We can build community, but we must lean into the brilliance and genius in this room and in every room that you are in. And you can't see it if you don't show it. And if you don't own your mistakes, you aren't actually addressing them. Right? I know I'm right. I know I'm right. I'm just saying. I hope y'all know I'm right. So, after my little call out, and let's be clear, this was one of the first that did not end in a punitive response, I might add. The coaching team invited me to get involved. At first they were like, hey Rhie, do you want to come do a training for your cohort on authentic engagement? Yeah, you heard that, authentic engagement. See, the thing is authentic engagement kind of used to be my thing, and it's probably why I have such a beef with it at this point, because it was what I was doing at the time. And they were like, do you want to come do this? And I was like, I absolutely want to come do this. And then they were like, hey, do you want to come be a subject matter expert and support some of your fellow communities in building out boards of people with lived expertise? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. And then suddenly, I was helping to design, review, select communities, and becoming a coach and federal technical assistant for round 2 of the Coordinated Entry Racial Equity Initiative. From trash cans to tables, I was offered a seat. The indomitable Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to serve in Congress, is often quoted for having once said, if they won't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And given the historical context, y'all know, everybody I know. Given the historical context of the time, this quote bubbles up every so often in inspiration memes and tweets and share after share after share. The idea of a seat at the table is rooted in power and how we don't have to beg to sit there if we bring our own chairs. But the table was built on the backs of those who now clamor to sit there.
Yes, ma'am.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't want a seat at your table. I want us to collectively build a new one. So here's the thing. We might use a table leg, maybe a pretty shiny part of that original tabletop, right? But this table is not a table that was built to serve all. And it is time that we step up, dismantle, and rebuild.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, use the resources at hand to create something. Use the resources at hand as merely the building blocks of what comes next.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
So as Dr. Huey P. Newton once said, many times people say that our program is reformist, but they ignore the fact that revolution is a process, that we left the program open-ended so that it could develop and that people could identify with it. We did not offer it to them as a conclusion. We offered it as a vehicle. And much of the time, the revolutionary, they're gonna have to guide the people into this understanding. But you can never take them from A to Z in one jump because Z is too far ahead. Therefore, when the revolutionary begins to indulge in Z or final conclusions, or I don't know, housing metrics, the people do not relate to him. Therefore, he is no longer a revolutionary if revolution is a process. This makes any action or function which does not promote the process non-revolutionary. So here's what I'm gonna say. If the idea of revolution is a little too, I don't know, revolutionary for you, I offer you the option of switching out the word revolution for the word change, a thing that most of us can agree on that we need. When we are setting out to establish and build and establish new ways of building and doing, we must be led by our values so that we see better outcomes. So that it's not about, I didn't end youth homelessness this year. It's about, what did I do today to ensure that no one has to sleep outside tonight that doesn't want to? When we are guided by our values, we see better outcomes. But when we are locked into the box of these outcomes, we close ourselves off to the possibilities offered by our processes.
Yes.
When we built the Austin Prioritization Index, the nation was watching, and then the requests started rolling in.
Come on.
Come to this
Come
conference.
on.
Can I grab your brain for a second? Hey, can I get a copy of the tool? You got a copy of the tool? I really want to see the tool. Rhie, can you send me a copy of the tool? So here's the thing. I've been asked this so many times in my consultant work, and my answer is always the same. What was incredible, innovative, perhaps even revolutionary about the work that we did on the API was the way that we did it. Off-the-shelf tools do not work. We pulled together, our process, our methodology is where the value can be found for others. We pulled together a team of everyone. We had folks with lived experience, we had Black folks, we had queer folks, we had youth, we had family elder care, we had data people, which we found out we were all data people. P.S. You are all data people,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
data is information that you take in every day. You're taking in data from me right now, okay? But we had everybody. We took the time to be intentional with who was at the drafting board. And we also interrogated our own system data. We looked to our numbers to find out what they were saying. We spent time to understand where the gaps were showing up in our system. The questions are great, don't get me wrong, but the tool is effective because we spent the time, and I believe they are still spending the time, to pilot, to test, to identify where our system is failing our people
Yes,
in
ma'am.
our community.
Yes, ma'am.
We created our own vehicle, and we continue to test drive it. We also recognized that the prioritization tool was only one process in a system that is causing and continues to cause harm to our community.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we began to expand our interrogation. So what does it all mean, right? Our work can only flourish when we show up as whole people and allow others to do the same. If you leave here today with nothing else that came out of my mouth, internalize the need for transparent accountability, for what it means to own our missteps and treat them as opportunities. Know that when we hold power, our missteps lead to harm. And so our job, our role, requires intentionality in the face of urgency. Know that if you are in this room today, you are already at a table. And your opportunity here is to walk out of this room and begin the work of collectively dismantling and rebuilding these tables. Transparency, honesty, intentionality, integrity. These are the pillars to stand up our new tables. These old tables were about power. Who had it? Who would kill, oppress, or maim to keep it? And who would be given the privilege of serving those who held the power of violence and might? But y'all, yeah, you too, little one. The people are mightier. Our community is mightier. This change that so many are seeking here in Texas and beyond, it comes not from the minds who built the first two tables. They had different tools then. Systems change will come when those who are the most intimately familiar with the horrors these systems have wrought are the ones directing and building what comes next. Change is coming, y'all. There ain't nothing, it's coming. Change is coming. That's what life is. It's the constant. It's change. And we can affect it when we realize the futility of one size fits all, and we interrogate not just our systems, but our very own roles within them. These systems are working as they were designed quite intentionally to work.
Yes, ma'am.
And so any seeker or agent of change must loose the notion that we have to fix a broken system. Our role, our change, our revolution comes when we realize that we must dismantle and rebuild simultaneously, and that we must have the brilliance of all in order to build new tables.